All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into a topic that affects us all, healthcare cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And with all the cyber attacks happening these days, well, more than double the amount just a few years ago.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. In 2023 alone, there were something like 167 million patient records that were compromised.
It's a lot of records.
It is, it is. It's pretty scary, actually. So that brings us to IPADIA, the rules that protect our health information. And they are getting a makeover.
Yeah, well, a much needed one. The security rules specifically, which hasn't been touched since way back in 2013.
Okay, so what's really changing here? What are some of the big highlights that our listeners should know about?
One of the biggest is that IPAP is getting a lot stricter.
Aha.
It used to be a lot more, I guess you could say, flexible.
All right.
Organizations could kind of pick and choose which security measures they wanted to implement.
So like checking boxes just to say they did it, but not really implementing it, the spirit of the rule.
Exactly. But now, these updates are making things mandatory.
Interesting.
Real consequences if you don't comply.
Ah, so no more wiggle room.
Nope. No more wiggle room.
So give us an example, like what does this mean, practically speaking?
Okay, so take multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
Oh, I've heard that.
You probably use it all the time. It's that extra step where you have to, enter a code from your phone or email to log in.
Right.
It used to be optional under IPA,
Oh, really?
but now it's mandatory for everyone.
Well, that's good. I mean, it just seems like common sense these days, considering all the data breaches we hear about.
Yeah, for sure. And that's not the only big change.
Okay, there's more.
Encryption is another one getting a major upgrade. Before, it was kind of a suggestion.
Like, hey, you should probably encrypt your data, but if you don't want to, whatever.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
Now, it's mandatory for data that's just sitting there stored, at rest, as they say.
Right.
And also for data that's moving around or in transit.
So no more excuses.
No more excuses.
Yeah.
And there's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
We've seen so many data breaches lately where this sensitive information was just sitting there unprotected.
Right. Ripe for the taking.
Exactly. And that's why HHS is really cracking down. They want to make sure that even if hackers manage to get in, that data is at least unreadable.
Ah, okay. So it's like having a lock on your medicine cabinet.
Precisely. You're not just assuming nobody's going to try to break in. You're taking steps to protect what's inside.
Makes sense. Makes sense. But it's not all about external threats.
Right. These updates also address internal risks, like with network segmentation.
Network segmentation. What's that now?
Okay, imagine your network is like a house.
A house.
Yeah. And instead of having one big open space, you divide it into separate rooms with different levels of security. So you wouldn't want just anyone walking in off the street to have access to, your most valuable possessions, right?
Absolutely not.
So you create these boundaries, digital walls, essentially.
Oh, so it's like having separate rooms for different types of data.
Yeah. So maybe one room for patient records, another for financial data, and so on. And this way, even if one area is compromised, the damage is contained.
I'm starting to see a theme here, a lot of compartmentalizing, it seems.
Yeah, you're catching on. And this theme keeps going with the emphasis on regular security checkups. Yeah. Think of it like taking your network to the doctor for a checkup.
Uh-huh.
Instead of waiting for something to, break down, you're proactively checking for vulnerabilities. So vulnerability scans every 6 months, penetration testing annually, things like that.
Like an oil change for your computer system.
Exactly. And it's not just about building those walls and checking them. You also got to keep the house tidy. So that's where the digital decluttering comes in.
Digital decluttering. Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Basically, it means getting rid of anything unnecessary, old software, unused data, things like that. Just minimizing anything that could potentially become a security risk.
Sounds like good advice for life in general. But okay, back to IPA. What's the motivation for healthcare organizations to actually follow all this? Is it just about avoiding penalties?
Well, there's definitely that aspect. The consequences for non-compliance are getting a lot more serious. But beyond that, it's also about doing the right thing.
Right. Protecting patients.
Exactly. Protecting patients, protecting the integrity of the healthcare system as a whole. It's an ethical imperative.
Okay, I can get behind that. So we've got stricter rules, mandatory measures, regular checkups, and even some digital decluttering. What else?
Don't forget about documentation. It's more important than ever.
Documentation. I knew you were going to say that.
I know, but hear me out. You can't just check a box and say you're doing something. You need to have a record of it. A paper trail, so to speak.
So like a blueprint for your security system.
That's a great way to put it. You need to know exactly what you have, how your network is structured, what risks you face, and how you'll respond if something goes wrong. Asset inventory, network mapping, risk analysis, incident response plans, all documented.
Okay, I'm starting to see why that's important. So it's like having a detailed map of your entire security system.
Exactly.
But what if, even with all these precautions, something does go wrong? Like, what if there's a breach?
Well, that's where the new 72-hour restoration deadline comes in.
72 hours. Whoa.
Yeah, it's a tight time frame. But the idea is to get things back up and running as quickly as possible to minimize disruption and protect patient safety. Imagine a hospital systems being down for any longer than that. It could be disastrous.
I see your point. And I'm guessing the timelines for reporting breaches are also getting stricter?
Oh, absolutely. Business associates, those companies that work with healthcare providers, they now have just 24 hours to report a breach. And their subcontractors have the same time frame to notify them.
So it's all about speed and transparency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The faster everyone knows, the faster they can take action to mitigate the damage.
So everyone's really being put on high alert here, especially business associates, it seems like.
That's right. They're facing increased accountability.
How so?
Well, they now have to provide annual certifications proving they're compliant with all these new requirements, and they have to actually implement all the security measures, no more picking and choosing.
So the days of passing the buck are over.
Pretty much.
Mhm.
Everyone involved in handling electronic protected health information, or ePHI, needs to step up their game. It's a whole ecosystem now.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, so let's take a breather and recap. We've got stricter rules, mandatory measures, more documentation, tighter timelines. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, it is.
But what's the big picture here? What does this all really mean?
Well, I'd say we're seeing a major shift in healthcare cybersecurity. It's moving from a check-the-box approach to a more proactive, risk-based approach.
So it's not just about compliance anymore, it's about actually reducing risks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with these updates, HHS is making it clear. Bare minimum security is no longer acceptable.
All right, folks, we're just getting warmed up. Stay tuned for more on these HIPAA updates and what they mean for you.
It's going to be good.
It sounds like they're really tightening the screws, huh? But what about the patients? How will all this affect them? Like, aside from just knowing that their data is more secure, theoretically.
Well, I think one of the most immediate impacts patients might notice is faster notification if there is a breach.
Oh, right, because of those shorter reporting timelines we talked about.
Exactly. So that means people will be informed sooner and have more time to, take steps to protect themselves.
Okay, that makes sense. And early notification is so important. But are there any other ways patients might feel the effects of these changes? Like, directly?
Well, there's that 72-hour restoration deadline.
Oh,
Remember?
right.
While that's mainly aimed at healthcare organizations, think about what it means for patients. If the hospital systems are down for an extended period, that could delay surgeries, mess up medication schedules, make it impossible to access vital records.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You're right. That's a big deal.
It is. So that mandate is really about making sure that patient care isn't disrupted because of cybersecurity issues.
Right. So it's not just protecting data, it's protecting patient access to care.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it. But let's be real, all of this is going to be a lot of work for these organizations, especially smaller ones.
Yeah, it's no small feat, for sure. And there are valid concerns about the burden it could place on providers, especially those with limited resources.
Right.
But the good news is that HHS is providing guidance and support to help organizations adapt.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they're not just throwing them to the wolves.
Okay.
And a lot of experts believe the long-term benefits of having this stronger security in place really outweigh the initial cost.
It's kind of like investing in a better security system for your
Sure.
house, right?
Yeah. Might be a little pricey up front, but the peace of mind is priceless. Plus, you're less likely to get robbed.
Exactly. And when it comes to healthcare data, the stakes are even higher. We're talking identity theft, insurance fraud, even blackmail. Scary stuff.
Absolutely. And that's why protecting this information is so crucial. It's not just about compliance, it's about ethics. It's about doing the right thing.
Okay, I'm convinced. But is there a downside to all of this? Are we giving up something for all this security? Like, are we sacrificing any freedoms?
That's a really good question. And some critics are worried that all these new regulations might stifle innovation in healthcare technology.
Interesting. How so?
Well, smaller startups might struggle to meet all the requirements, right?
Yeah.
And that could slow down the development of new, maybe even life-saving technologies.
So it's a tough balance, strong security, but also not holding back progress.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And there's no easy answer. But clear communication, collaboration, and flexibility are key here. HHS needs to provide support, but also be open to feedback and make adjustments as needed.
Right, so it's an ongoing conversation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the beginning. These updates are a huge step, but they're not the end-all be-all.
Makes sense. Cybersecurity is always changing, right? We got to keep adapting.
Right. So what can our listeners do to stay ahead of the game and keep their health information safe?
Yeah. What are some actionable steps?
Well, first off, be aware of what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with.
That's good advice in general.
It is. You wouldn't buy a product without checking the reviews, right?
Right.
So do your research, ask questions about how your data is being protected, and if you're not comfortable with the answers, push back.
I like it. Be a savvy consumer of your healthcare data.
Exactly. Also, enable strong passwords, multi-factor authentication whenever it's available.
Right.
Watch out for those phishing scams, those sketchy emails. And stay informed about data breaches and best practices.
Sounds like a lot to keep up with.
It can be, but there are resources out there, like the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Department of Health and Human Services. They've got tons of information on their websites.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. The more you know about how your data is being handled, the better you can protect it. But stepping back, are these changes just a U.S. thing? Or are other countries doing this too?
That's a good question. What about globally?
Well, while IP is specific to the U.S., many other countries are facing these same challenges and implementing their own data privacy regulations.
Makes sense. Cybercrime doesn't have borders, right?
Like the European Union, for example. They have something called GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's really strict and has influenced a lot of similar laws in other regions. So it's kind of a global movement towards stronger data privacy.
Well, that's good news. But I gotta admit, with all this talk about cyber attacks and data breaches, it's easy to feel kind of helpless, like we're just sitting ducks.
I get that. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that while the threat is real, there are things we can do. And these HIPAA updates are definitely a big step in the right direction.
It's like installing a security system. It might not make you invincible, but it makes you a less appealing target.
Exactly.
So it's all about making it harder for the bad guys.
And remember, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. We all have a role to play.
So it's not just about the healthcare organizations upping their game. It's about all of us being more aware and careful. But let's bring it back to our listener. What's the one thing you want them to take away from all of this? So what's the one big takeaway here? What do you want our listeners to remember?
I think it's this. The world of healthcare cybersecurity is changing big time.
Yeah.
These updates to HIPAA are like a huge wake-up call for everyone in the healthcare industry. It's a shift towards taking security seriously.
No more hitting the snooze button, but will it actually make a difference? I mean, hackers are always finding new ways to break in, right?
Sure, true. It's a never-ending battle.
Right.
But these updates, they set a strong foundation for a safer future.
Okay.
By making things like MFA and encryption and those regular security checks mandatory, it really raises the bar for everybody.
Right.
It makes it harder for hackers to do their thing and forces those healthcare organizations to prioritize security,
So it's not just about checking boxes anymore. It's about making security part of the culture.
You got it. And that change in mindset, that's maybe the most important part of these updates. It's about going beyond just doing the bare minimum and really integrating security into everything healthcare organizations do.
So it's like shifting from seeing security as an extra cost to seeing it as an investment, like an investment in patient trust and in making sure the healthcare system can actually function in the long run.
Exactly. And that's a message that goes way beyond just healthcare. In this digital age, data security is everyone's business.
Right. It's not just for the IT folks.
Exactly. So whether you're a patient, a provider, or just someone who uses technology, which is pretty much everyone these days,
Right.
understanding these rules and best practices, it's essential.
So it's about being a responsible digital citizen.
You got it.
But let's be real, keeping up with all these changes, it can be a lot. Where can folks go to learn more and stay in the loop?
Oh, there's some great resources out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the HHS website, the Department of Health and Human Services. They've got tons of information about HIPAA, all the updates and guides on how to be compliant.
Perfect.
And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they have a lot of great stuff about data privacy and security in general.
Okay, so two good starting points. What about like industry groups or publications?
Yeah, those two. They often have really insightful analysis and practical tips on how to handle all this complex stuff. It's like having a team of experts backing you up.
I like it. Strength in numbers.
Exactly. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you are to protect yourself and your information.
Couldn't agree more. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but I have a feeling this is only the beginning of the conversation. Technology keeps changing, so the threats and the rules will keep changing too.
That's for sure.
But armed with the knowledge we talked about today, our listeners can navigate all these changes with confidence.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's not just about data, right? It's about people. That's why all of this is so important.
Absolutely. It's about protecting people's health, their privacy, their well-being.
Exactly.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of healthcare cybersecurity.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Stay safe out there, everybody, and keep those firewalls strong.